Here it comes. The Thunderbolt. The Jug that was also a juggernaut. A highly mobile, fearsome beast. According to Peter Henn, a German pilot who fought against the Allies in the skies of Europe, this aircraft instilled fear in the hearts of the Luftwaffe pilots. Not many people know, though, that this incredible plane has an equally incredible story behind its creation. In truth, this plane was really close to not happening at all, or never making it past the selection process of the USAAF. This huge, bulky aircraft went against all the conventions of the day. It was nothing like a proper single-engine fighter of the time. In the second half of the 1930s, the whole world was looking at Spain, where the Messerschmitt Bf 109, representing a new generation of fighters, captured the imagination of the aircraft engineers all around the world. All major powers decided that they wanted something like that. A cantilever monoplane with a liquid-cooled inline engine, retractable landing gear, and preferably an all-metal construction as well. Because of the newest trends of the time, the US considered even the Curtiss P-36 to be obsolete, and that was definitely not a bad plane. Then there was the Republic P-43 Lancer, designed by Swirsky and Kartveli, which admittedly was a bit peculiar, with quite a few unusual design choices, like having a heavy turbo supercharger mounted behind the cockpit. The military bought a small batch of P-43s anyway, probably to support the manufacturer. It's hard to say whether this gesture actually helped the company or not, though, as it was riddled by internal conflicts, it was around that time when Swirsky himself was voted out of his own company. With such changes to corporate leadership, you'd be excused for not noticing the main thing. In fact, the way the turbocharger was used on the P-43 wasn't just good, it was excellent. Moving the turbo supercharger to the back wasn't a random choice. As heated air moved along the ductwork, it had time to cool down, preventing the turbocharger from overheating, which was something that was very common for designs where the turbocharger was placed directly next to the engine. By sacrificing some of its low-altitude performance characteristics, engineers allowed the P-43 to excel at high altitudes where gear-driven centrifugal superchargers struggled to keep up. In 1939, though, the general public failed to see the beauty of this design. There's a joke in the engineering circles that goes like this: what's the difference between a good designer and a genius one? A good designer makes things that the client needs today. A genius designer creates products that the client will need tomorrow. By then, the war in Europe started. Kartveli realized that high-altitude operations were going to be a very important part of this conflict. But it was also clear that what the US needed wasn't a P-43. What the US needed was a completely new, improved aircraft based on the same design. Even at conservative estimates, the prototype of the new fighter was going to be a much bigger and at least 1.5 times heavier than the preceding vehicle, which was a pretty big thing to begin with. The new plane was powered by a single engine, but it was the most powerful engine available to the US. A turbo-supercharged Pratt & Whitney R2800 18-cylinder radial engine. The aircraft was also given a lot of firepower. 8 M2 Brownings had a 1-second burst mass of almost 4.5 kilograms. You have to understand, though, that the P-47 wasn't just big. It was massive. American pilots who were used to the light P-40s were initially quite taken aback by the size of this new fighter. They criticized the vehicle for not being nimble enough again and again. But then Thunderbolts made it to the UK, and everything changed. The biggest single-engine fighter aircraft of its time was simply perfect for escorting bombers, as it had enough range and could operate at high enough altitudes to keep up with the British bombers. Furthermore, the P-47 had an excellent dive speed and was actually surprisingly maneuverable at high speeds. The Thunderbolt was comfortable with attacking targets at altitudes that put German aircraft to a serious disadvantage. Soon, it became clear that being a high-altitude escort fighter wasn't the only thing the P-47 was really good at. It also made for an excellent attack aircraft. Can you name any other fighter of the time that could carry a literal ton of bombs and 10 powerful HVARs, deliver all of that, and then get away at breakneck speed? Not only that, its bulky and incredibly sturdy engine in the front was an excellent shield for the pilot. And the ductwork of the supercharger system did an okay job as an improvised landing skid if things went south. Here's an interesting fact. At the time, the P-47 was actually the safest aircraft to have a crash landing in, allowing pilots to get off with nothing more than a fright in situations that would be lethal on any other plane. The team that created the P-47 wasn't quite satisfied with the original model, so the design continued to evolve. The B, C, and early D variations received a few modifications to the fairing, as well as a distinctive cockpit canopy providing excellent visibility, and they eventually were also fitted with a more powerful variant of the engine. The war in the Pacific demanded greater fighter ranges, so there was also a special variant of the Thunderbolt, the P-47N, introduced specifically for use in the Pacific, fitted with a new, longer-span wing and a new dorsal fin for increased longitudinal stability. Thunderbolt served for a very long time, with the last aircraft of the series retiring as late as the mid-1960s. Any place the aircraft went, it quickly became the pilot's favorite. Maybe only except for the Soviet Union, and only because it wasn't built for the Eastern Front. The Thunderbolt was truly a legendary aircraft that left a lasting legacy that never dimmed down, even though there was another Thunderbolt later on, an even more dangerous jet-powered one at that. But that's a story, for another time.